Okay, a very good morning to all. So let's continue with our lecture of DBMS and the point where we left yesterday. So yesterday we started with transaction, and in that we studied about database recovery, right? So let's go through it very quickly, that what is database recovery and all these things, right? So just a moment. Right, so we talk about recovery, that recovery care is much required because we may have database failures many a times, and those failures could be because of this type of reasons. That is, that could be a disk failure, that could be a DBMS failure or system failure or operating system failure or a power failure. So we require some type of backup so that we can recover our database and our system can work smoothly, right? So we don't want data inconsistency at all in any case. So that was the main reason we require recovery of database, right? So for that we have a log based recovery. In that, what actually it does, it stores the records in forms of logs for each and every particular operation being done by a particular transaction. So it is storing the logs in such this type way. That is what it will store the start time of a particular transaction, it will store the transaction ID, it will store the record ID for each of the operations, and then it will also record what type of operations is being done, then what type of values are to be changed, and what will be the next or the new value, and what is the status of the transaction. So all these things are stored in the logs, right? This is the example, and there are two types of log based recovery, that is immediate database modification, and we have the deferred database modification. So what is the main difference between immediate and deferred? Immediate means that whatever transaction is updating a data, if we are having any update command in a particular transaction, right? So the transaction will not wait for commit command to be executed, but once the update command is executed, it will reflect all the changes in the particular database. But in deferred database, whatever updates are being made, until and unless the commit command is executed, the database will not be reflected with the particular change or update. So that is the main difference between immediate and deferred database modifications in log based recovery. But we know that log based recovery could be very much time consuming, so we had a checkpoint based recovery, in which we have clear idea that which transactions have completed before checkpoint, which transactions have started but not committed before checkpoint, and which transactions have actually started after checkpoint. So we will have a clear idea that what transactions are to be restarted, what transactions are to be ignored, and what transactions are never restarted. So from this diagram you can see T1 will never be restarted, T2 will T2 and T3 will be restarted because they have committed or started after the checkpoint, and T4 will be ignored completely because it has failed at some point. So this is what checkpoint is used for database recovery. Similar to checkpoints and similar to log based recovery, there is some other option, and that is what we have: shadow paging. Shadow paging means it contains pages of database. Each database is fragmented or scattered into different number of pages, and those pages are stored in page tables. Mainly we have two page tables, that is current page table and shadow page table. Whenever transaction is starting, both the page table will have same data. As we said, both the tables are identical, but once the transaction has some changes, the current page table will point to the changes, and shadow page will be having pointer to the same pages, that is old pages, right? So current page changes as the transaction changes the data, but shadow page never changes the pages, so that shadow page can be used in terms of recovery. So let's see the example directly. So you can see a new page table is created from current page and shadow page, and both of them are pointing to the new pages and the same pages of the same database. So this is what the initial stage, and once the database changes or there is some change in the transaction, right? So at that time the old pages will be referred by the shadow page and new pages will be referred by the current page. You can see here, so page 2 and page 5 were changed. So current page table is pointing to this, and shadow page is still pointing to the page 1 2 3 4 5. Old page also are being referred by shadow page. So whenever there is an error, there is a transaction failure, this shadow page table will be used and database will be recovered. So this is what we have covered so far in this particular topic, that is recovery. Any doubts, anyone, in this particular part? Anyone? Is there any doubt? Anyone? Please raise it if you have any doubt. Any doubts so far in this? Fine, so let's move ahead with the next topic. We are again continuing with the recovery only. So in that recovery we have a cascading rollback. Now what do you mean by cascading rollback? Let's see. A cascading rollback occurs in a database system when a transaction T1 causes a failure and a rollback must be performed. So you know what is rollback, that if there is a failure, a transaction must be rolled back to its initial stage. So that is what rollback definition is. But what is actually cascading rollback? Let's see. Other transactions, those are dependent on T1's action, must also be rolled back due to T1's failure. That means if one transaction is getting failed and there are some other transactions which are dependent on that particular transaction, then all those transactions must also be rolled back. All those transactions must also get failed and must be rolled back. So this is what cascading rollback is. Again, read out the definition once again, everyone. Read the definition again. What it says, again I am repeating, if one transaction is failing, then all the other transactions which are dependent on that particular transaction must also fail and all the transactions must roll back. That means one transaction's failure causes many other transactions to fail. See, this definition is important. One transaction's failure causes many other transactions to fail. So this is what cascading rollback is. That means a transaction's failure causes many other transactions which are dependent on it also will be failing. So this is what cascading rollback is. That means, again I am repeating, one transaction is failing and that is being rolled back, then all the other transactions which are dependent on that failed transaction must be also rolled back. That is what cascading rollback states. See this example. So you can see here in T10 there is one operation, that is read A, read B, write A. Right? Here read A, write A, and here it is read A. So we can assume that this read A, this highlighted one, this read A is dependent on this write A, because it is reading all those data which is being which has been wrote by this particular transaction. Similarly, this read A is dependent on this write A, because whatever data is being written by this transaction will be read by this transaction T12. So T10 is reading and writing something, and this wrote is being referred by this read of T11, and this write of T11 is being referred by T12's read operation. So you can see there is a dependency on this and there is a dependency on this. So let us say if T10 fails, then T11 and T12 must also be rolled back. That means if this transaction is failing, all its depending transaction must also get rolled back or fail because they are dependent on some of the values of T10. Here this read A is dependent on write A of T10, and read A of 12, T12 is dependent on write A of T11. So if this particular transaction is getting failed, all the other transactions that are dependent on this transaction must also roll back. So this is what cascading rollback is. Is it clear, guys? Is it clear, everyone? What is cascading rollback? One transaction dependent on other transaction, and that transaction is getting failed and rolled back, then all the dependent transactions must be rolled back. Am I clear with this, everyone? Any doubts in this, anyone? Shall I repeat it again? Anyone who requires repetition? Anyone who requires repetition? Okay, so let's move ahead. So based on cascading rollback, we have one more term called cascadeless schedule. Now what actually it is? If in a schedule, if a transaction is not allowed to read a data item until the last transaction has written, either it is committed or aborted, then such schedule is known as cascadeless schedule. So what does this mean? Can anyone tell me? Looking at the definition, can anyone describe this particular definition to me? Just read it again. A transaction is not allowed to read a data item until and unless other transaction is providing either commit command or abort command on that particular item, data item. Can anyone give me the answer for this? Can you just explain in a little bit small way? Can anyone try? Fine. So let's see it again. What it says, let us say here, assume the same example above. This particular transaction is writing something data item A, right? So it is writing some value A, or it is changing some value A, and this particular transaction wants to read this particular value A. So what this cascadeless schedule says, that if in a schedule a transaction is reading a particular data item, then that data item must only be allowed to read if this transaction has committed this particular work. So there should be a commit command at the end. If there is a commit after this write A, then and then this read operation must be allowed. If there is no commit, then this read operation must not be allowed. That is why, the reason why it is being done, because we have to maintain the database consistency. So if there is a commit command or abort command, so either the transaction is committed, that is successfully completed, or the transaction has aborted due to some reason. If these are the message given by the transaction, then and then the other transaction must be allowed the same data item to be read. That is what this cascadeless schedule states. That means if this wants to read, and that is being written by this particular transaction, then this transaction should provide either commit or abort message. Then and then we can say it is a cascadeless schedule. Clear? So there is no interference between any particular transaction. One transaction is completing its task, and then the second transaction is starting the operations or task. Clear? So this is what cascadeless schedule is. Clear with this, everyone? Clear with this? Fine. So this is what all about recovery is, cascading rollback, or you use cascade lash schedule. Very quickly I am repeating, cascading rollback means if one transaction fails and if there are some depending transactions on that, then all the transactions must fail and roll back. And cascade schedule means if one transaction wants to read a particular data item and that is being returned by some other transaction, then that transaction must provide either commit command or abort command so that consistent data is read by a particular transaction. That is what cascadeless schedule is, right? So this is all about database recovery. So next topic is concurrency control. So can anyone tell me what do you mean by concurrency? Can anyone tell me what do you mean by concurrency? What do you mean by a term called concurrency? Can anyone tell me? Very good. Yes, two transactions at same time, two different operations at same time. That is what concurrency control means. That means we are actually going to manage if there are two transactions or two different operations on same data item are to be executed, then how that can be managed. How that can be managed. How two different transactions on same data item or two different operations on same data item can be managed at a single point of time. So that is what concurrency control is. So it is the procedure for managing simultaneous operations without conflicting with each other. That is what the definition of concurrency control is. It is a procedure to manage simultaneous operations without conflicting each other. So we are allowing two different operations to work together without having any conflicts between them. So what will be the conflicting operations? Anyone? What do you mean by conflicting operations? What do you mean by conflicting operations? Can anyone tell me? Yes, crossing, but what crossing, Yash? So conflicting operations means there is one read operation and there is one write operation. So one transaction wants to read a particular data and other transaction wants to write a same data. So that is what conflicting is, right? So conflict means one wants to read and one wants to write. Fine. So that is what conflicting operations are. So we need to manage the conflicting operations such that the all the operations are executed at the same time and very smoothly without disturbing each other. So that is the task of concurrency control. So mainly it is going to focus on read and write operations on the database. So it is used to address conflicts which occur with a multi-user system who have read and write operation. That means one system wants to read and other system wants to write on the same database, then we need to manage their conflicts. That is what concurrency control will do, as I said earlier, right? So let us say if T1 conflicts with T2 over data item A, right? So this is a data item to be read or updated, and T1 and T2 are conflicting over this particular data item. Then concurrency control will decide which of these T1 or T2 will get this data item and which of them will be rolled back or will be asked to wait. That means if T1 and T2 both wants to access this data item A, then concurrency control will decide to whom we should give the permission for accessing it and whom should be asked to wait for some time. So that is what concurrency control will do. One will be asked to wait and other will be asked to access and perform its operation. So that is what the task of concurrency control is, right? Manage the conflicting operations at the same time. Ask one of them to wait and ask one of them to perform their operation. That is what concurrency control will do. So it will resolve the read-write and write-write conflicts that we already discussed. Apply isolation through mutual exclusion between conflicting transactions. That means it will apply isolation. It will separate both the transactions by asking one of the transactions to perform the operations and other transaction to wait. That is what isolation is. We are differing both of them. One will execute and one will wait or roll back. So this is what apply isolation through mutual exclusion between conflicting transactions. Next is concurrency control helps us to ensure serialized schedule or serializability, right? So it is ensuring that all our transactions, all our schedules are in a proper sequence or in a proper serial. So this is what it will ensure. Then let's see, allowing concurrent execution of operations may lead to following problems. So if we are allowing concurrent executions, what type of problems we may face? Let's see. The first is lost update. So what is lost update? If two transactions T1 and T2 both read the same data item, so T1 and T2 are reading same data item, that is, let us say T is the item that is T1 and T2 are reading, and after that reading both are updating that item, right? At the same time they are reading the item, at the same time they are updating the item. Then what will happen? In this case the first update will be overwritten by the second update. So let us say T1 and T2 both have actually reading some data item, let us say 500 rupees. Now T1 is adding 50 rupees to it and T2 is minusing or subtracting 100 rupees from it. So there are two different transactions. This is T1, let us say, and this is T2. Initially both of them have read this particular data item 500. This is read. This is they have done actually, right? And after that both of them update the data. One is adding and other is subtracting. This is add and this is subtract. So what it says in this case, the first one, this particular transactions update will be overwritten by this particular transactions update. That means 50 plus 500 plus 50 is 550, right? And 550 minus 100 is 450. But what actually the answer will be there? This won't be taken into consideration, only this will be considered, and your final answer will be 400, which actually must be 450. Which actually must be 450, but this will be overwritten and only this will be performed and you will get 400. So actually your data will not have the consistent data, it will have a lost update. That means you will have some loss of data, right? So this is what the problem of concurrent execution is. Is it clear? Initially both are reading this 500, one wants to add 50, other wants to minus 100. So this transaction will not be considered and only this transaction will be considered in concurrent execution, and ultimately you will have your data loss. If we compare with this, you will have your data loss. Clear with this everyone? Lost update? Any doubts in this? This is what lost update is. Am I clear? Am I clear with this everyone? Okay, then let's see what is the second problem. Second problem is dirty read. So what do you mean by dirty read? When one transaction updates some item and then fails. So let us say 500 is the initial value, right? And I have added 50 rupees to it. So T1 transaction has added this particular data item, right? And after this update, it has failed. That is what the first statement says. It has failed. So moreover, this updated item is accessed by another transaction before it is rolled back to its initial value. So this transaction had not committed actually. The commit command was not executed by this particular transaction, but it failed in between. But by the time this amount was updated, that is 550 was made in the virtual buffer, the same data item was accessed by some other transaction. So it has read 550, but actually it would be 500 because the transaction has failed. So again, there is a dirty read. That means you are getting the falsy data whenever you are getting or reading a particular data item. That is, you are getting incorrect data if you are reading a particular data item that has been updated by some transaction, but that transaction has not committed. Actually it has failed. So that is what dirty read is. It means one transaction is updating and failing, but by that time the rollback is being executed, one other transaction comes and reads the same data item and it gets the updated data item. It gets the updated data item. So this is the example. 500 plus 550 plus 50 equals to 550 has been updated, but after that it has failed because of no commit command has been executed. Between that, T2 comes and reads this value, but this is the incorrect value because this transaction is getting rolled back. That means only 500 will be reflected after the rollback has been executed. So this is what dirty read is. You are getting incorrect or falsy or invalid data from the database. So this is the again problem with concurrent execution, right? And the third one is incorrect retrieval. That means when one transaction accesses data to use it in another other operation, but before it can use, another transaction updates that data and commits. So again, see, T1 is having initial value is 500, right? T1 is having 500. So one transaction is accessing a data. At the same time, the T1 wants to access this 500, but at the same time other transaction T2 comes, adds 50 to this particular value and commits. What it does, while this transaction was reading, right, T2 comes, adds 50 to it and commits it. So what actually the data will be now? 550. So actually T1 should read this 550, but it is going to read only this 500 because this transaction had came in between and it has updated the transaction, right? So it will read this, but actually it should read this one. So again, incorrect retrieval will be there. You will be reading incorrect data, right? One transaction is trying to read one of the value. That value at the same time is updated by some other transaction, and actually the first transaction which is trying to read a particular data will have incorrect data. So this is what incorrect retrieval is. So if we are allowing concurrent executions, we will have three different and main problems, that is lost update, dirty read and incorrect retrieval. Either your update data will be lost, either you will get an invalid data, or you will retrieve invalid values. So these are the problems that are faced by concurrent execution of the operations. Any doubts, students, here till here? Anyone? Go through these definitions. If you have any doubts, just raise it. I am giving you 2 minutes to revise this. Yes. Any doubts, students? Anyone in this? Yeah, students. Any doubts? Anyone? Fine. So shall we move ahead now with the next part? Okay. So this is what the problem is with the particular concurrency control or concurrent executions of the operations. So how to deal with it? So to deal all the types of things, the solution is we provide a lock. A lock is a variable associated with the data item to control the concurrent access to that particular data item. It means that each and every value of your database will have some types of locks or lock variables. Now what are those lock variables? We will see. So each data item can have two different lock variables. The first one is exclusive lock. That means data item can be read as well as write. So you are having complete writes on your complete database or data items. So if you have exclusive lock, then you can either read the data or you can write the data, you can change the data, and it is symbolized by lock X. Remember this word, students. Lock X means exclusive lock. That means you are allowed to read as well as make some changes, that is write the data or operations. You are allowed for read and write operations in the database if you have lock X, that is exclusive X mode. And second is shared S mode. Shared means you are only having the rights to read a particular data. You are having read and write here in exclusive X mode, but in shared mode you are having only the read permissions or read rights, and it is symbolized by lock S, right? So it is symbolized by lock S. So remember, whenever I am using lock S, it will be shared lock, that means only read, and whenever I am using lock X, it will be exclusive mode, that is it will be read and write, both of them, right? So what is the compatibility of these locks on two different transactions? So let us say we have transaction 1 here and transaction 2 here. So if transaction 1 is having shared lock and exclusive lock, at the same time transaction 2 is having shared lock, then shared lock will be allowed, but shared lock with exclusive lock won't be allowed. Exclusive lock with shared lock won't be allowed, and exclusive lock with exclusive lock won't be allowed. That means if one transaction is having shared lock and other transaction is also having shared lock on the same data item T, let us say this is the T, on the same data item T, then this is allowed. But on same data item, one transaction is having X lock and other transaction is having S lock, wants to have S lock, then it won't be allowed. Again, one transaction is having X lock, other transaction is having S lock, again it won't be allowed, and both the transaction are having X lock, it won't be allowed. So this is the compatibility, that how the permissions will be given. If two different transactions want to only have a shared lock on one particular data item, it will be allowed. But if two different transactions want to have two different types of locks on the same data item, then they won't be allowed. That is what this compatibility matrix says, right? So transactions can only proceed only after their lock request is granted. That means whenever you are trying to access a particular data item, you need to say that which type of lock you have to acquire, you want actually, which type of lock you want X lock or you want S lock. And once you are given the permission and you are given the locks, then and then you can start your transaction. Otherwise you won't be allowed to perform any operations of your transaction, right? So this is what is used for managing the concurrent executions of the operations or transactions. Is it clear, guys? Exclusive lock, that is lock X. Shared lock, that means lock S. Is this clear with everyone? Okay, so let's see what is lock based protocol is. So based on these locks, we will have one lock based protocol. So let's see, a transaction may be granted a lock on an item if the requested lock is compatible with locks already held by the item by the other transaction. It means, let us say on data item T, I already have S lock. What is S lock? Shared lock, right? I am having lock S, right? So I already have lock S on this particular data item, that is T1 is having this particular lock S on this particular item T, right? And then T2 comes, right? And T2 also wants this particular data item, and it is asking for lock X, right? So it is asking for lock X. So now the transaction will be given the lock access only if it is compatible. Here it is lock S and here it wants lock X. So it is compatible? No, it is not compatible, because if there is one shared lock and other is asking for exclusive lock, the compatibility won't be allowed. So this will not be allowed, right? But here if it is instead of X, if we have lock S, that means both wants to just read a particular data item, then this would be allowed. So locks will be only granted if they are compatible, and that compatibility will be matched by this particular matrix. So if two transactions want shared lock, it is allowed. But if two transactions wants two different types of locks, it will never be allowed, right? So this is what the definition of this particular statement is, right? A transaction may be granted a lock on an item only if the compatibility is there with the particular other transaction, right? So this is what the definition is. So let's see, any number of transactions can hold shared locks, right? So shared lock can be used by any number of transactions on a single data item. So I can have T1, T2, T3, T4, T5, as many transactions having shared lock on T data item, right? So you can have as many number of shared locks. But if any transaction holds exclusive lock, then no other transaction can have any type of locks. So let us say T1 is having exclusive lock X, right? Lock X on data item S, let us say. Then no other transaction T2 or T3 or T4, any transaction cannot have any type of locks on this data item. They have to wait for this transaction to commit. They have to wait for this transaction to commit and release this particular lock. The transaction must release a particular lock. So this is what this definition is. If any transaction is having exclusive lock, then no other transaction can have any type of locks on the same data item. they have to wait till the exclusive lock is released. That means this transaction is saying that I am done with my work and you can all can use this data item, right? So this is what the definition is. So if a lock cannot be granted, the requesting transaction is made to wait till all the compatible locks held by the transaction are released. As I said, if transaction commits and releases all the locks, then and then other transaction will be allowed to use those locks and access the data item. So they have to wait till the first transaction releases all types of locks, right? So this is what the example of transaction using locking. See here, transaction T2 has acquired one lock S on data item A. So this is shared lock, right? So it will be only allowed to read a particular data. It cannot write a particular data. And after the data or after the work has been performed, it is releasing this particular lock. So unlock means release. Unlock means release. So once the task of A item has been done by T2 transaction, it is releasing this particular lock. Then lock S on B. So again it is having only read item, right? And again it will unlock after the read item or the operation is completed. So this is how the operation will go. It will acquire lock, it will perform its operations, and then it will release the lock by using unlock keyword. Clear with this, guys? A locking protocol is a set of rules followed by all transactions while requesting and releasing the locks. So they have to follow these rules, that you acquire a lock, you acquire the lock, you perform your task. Once your task is completed, you release your locks. So this is what the protocol is and they have to follow. Clear with this, guys, everyone? Any doubts in this? Yes, students, any doubts in this? Anyone? Shall I repeat? Anyone requires repetition? Anyone requires repetition? Fine. So let's move ahead and let's see how it works actually. So the execution of this particular transaction using lock based protocol, right? Execution phase can be described in two different ways. See, so for a transaction there will be some begin time, there will be some ending time, right? And how this particular transactions will be managed, that management will be done using the request and grant of your locks. So when execution of transaction starts, create a list of data items and type of locks it needs and request for that particular lock. So whenever the transaction starts, first what we need to make? We need to make one list. That list will have A part and B part. A part will have the items or values that this transaction require. What it will have? It will have all the types of values or all the list of values that a transaction requires for its execution, and B will have all the types of locks that this particular transaction requires. So either it will have S lock or it will have X lock, and here it will be having all the values that is required by a transaction for its execution. So what it says, once execution starts, prepare a list of these things. Prepare a list of items as well as prepare a list of locks, and request all the types of locks that you require. So you need to request to the concurrency control manager that I want these type of locks on this particular data items. So first you need to prepare a list, right? Then what we have to do, so lock request is being given to the transaction manager, and when all the locks are granted, transaction continues to execute its operation. So lock request is being given, the request will be granted, so you will be given all the types of locks you require, and you will start with execution of your operations. Once your operation is ended, right, once your transaction is completed, you need to release your locks. So you will release all your locks, and once you start releasing your locks, then you won't be allowed to acquire any other locks. So once your transaction starts and you are releasing any of your locks, right, then you are not in a position to request any other lock. Whatever locks you require, you have to ask it at the first time only, whenever the transaction is starting. This is the rule. Whenever the transaction is starting, you have to request all the types of locks you require for execution. In between transaction, or whenever you are releasing the locks, you are not allowed to request for any particular locks. Only you will be releasing all the types of locks. So as soon as the transaction releases its first lock, it cannot demand for any other lock, but only can release the acquired lock. So you will be only releasing all your locks for other transactions to use it. So this is what the phase is. You will request all your locks. You will, once all the lock requests are granted, you will perform the execution, and then once the execution is completed, you will release all the locks. And one more rule is that between the execution, you cannot ask for any other locks, right? You have to ask for all the types of locks at the beginning of the transaction. So this is what the rule of execution is. And what are the drawbacks of this particular thing? What can be the drawbacks? So let us see this particular schedule. What you can see, T3 transaction is having exclusive lock on data item B. So it is reading it, then it is making some change on it, and it is writing it. Okay. Similarly, lock SA. Okay, so transaction T4 is having shared lock on data item A. Here it was data item B, here it is data item A, and again it is reading it, and then it is trying to acquire a lock on data item B. Which type of lock? Shared lock, right? So will it be able to get it? And here again T3 is trying to having exclusive lock on data item A. So using this scenario, what you can say? Using this scenario, what you can say? You can say that here this T4 wants to access B item, but B item is already been locked by T3 and it has not unlocked, right? It has not released. No release is here. No release, right? So this cannot use this particular data item, and this transaction cannot be performed. Similarly, here this also wants lock on data item A, and data item A is used by T4, but here also there is no release. There is no release. So what actually it is? This transaction also cannot execute because both of them are dependent on each other's data item to be released, right? So none of these transactions will be able to perform because here this transaction is dependent on this to be released, and this transaction is dependent on this to be released. So both of them are dependent on each other for their locks to be released. So none of the transactions will be executed, right? So read this: neither T3 nor T4 can make progress. Lock X of B causes T4 to wait for T3, right? So this lock X of B will ask T4 to wait until and unless T3 is releasing this particular lock. Similarly, lock X of A, so here S of A should be there, right? This lock will also want to be allowing this particular transaction because it has not released this particular locks. So both of them are dependent on each other for their locks to be released. Here there is no release and here also there is no release. So none of the transaction will be allowed to perform, right? So this is what pitfall or a drawback of a particular lock based protocol is, that if one transaction is having a lock and if the transaction is not releasing that lock, then the other transaction who requires that particular data item will be asked to wait for an infinite time. So this is the problem, and this type of situation is called deadlock, where one transaction is waiting for other transaction to release a lock on a particular data item, right? So one transaction here, this transaction is waiting to release a lock on data item B, and this transaction is waiting for this transaction to release a lock on data item A. So this is what deadlock is. That means none of them can work, none of them can move ahead, none of them can progress. So this is deadlock. So to handle a deadlock, one of the T3 or T4 must be rollback. So if we want to resolve this problem, either this transaction or this transaction must be rolled back. There should be a rollback on either of any of the transaction, right? So to solve this problem, there should be some rollback. The potential for deadlock exists in most locking protocols. So you will find deadlock in many different types of lock based transactions or schedules, because deadlocks will occur if one of the transaction is not releasing the data item already accessed or locked by the other transaction, right? So deadlock is the common thing in almost all types of this particular locking based protocols. So starvation can also be possible. Now what is starvation? Starvation means transaction may be waiting for an X lock on an item while a sequence of other transactions request and also are granted the S lock on the same item. So let us take an example here. T1 transaction wants X lock, right, on data item S. This is the data item S on which T1 wants S lock, but the X lock is not granted to this particular transaction. At the same time, T2, T3 and T4 request for S lock, right? They request for S lock and they are given the S lock. That means they request for shared lock and they are given the permission to have the shared lock on the same data item while keeping this particular transaction waiting. So what it says, starvation means one transaction has been made waiting till and by the time other transactions are given the grants for the locks and they are also performing their operations. So one transaction is kept in wait state for infinite loop. One transaction is kept in wait state for infinite loop. So this is what starvation is. So the same transaction is repeatedly rolled back because it is kept in a wait loop continuously. So it will be rolled back continuously, repeatedly, right? So starvation can be managed in following ways. There is no other transaction holding a lock that arises a certain type of conflicts. So if T1 wants to access S data item, then there should not be any T2 T3 or T4 having locks on this particular item. So that is one of the solution, that no other transaction should have a lock which arises a particular type of conflicts. That means here it is X lock and here it is S lock. So this conflict should not be there. And the other one is, there should not be any other transaction who requested a lock before any other transaction is still waiting to acquire a lock. That means, let me take this example for this definition. T1 wants X lock on data item A, right? So this is the request already made, and after this request was made, T2 is asking for shared lock, that is S lock. So this request should not be accepted because T1 has already asked for some type of lock. So whatever requests that have come earlier must be given the response first, not the newer request must be responded. This is the rule that it says, that if some transaction has already requested for some locks earlier, then no other transaction coming after that particular transaction must be given a particular request. It should make sure that earlier transactions will not be in a wait state. Earlier transactions will not be in a wait state. So this is what starvation and deadlock is. Deadlock means two transactions are waiting for each other for release of the locks, and starvation means one transaction is kept in a wait state while other transactions are performing their operations. So this is what starvation and deadlock is, right? So I think, any doubts in this? Anyone? Any doubts in this till here? Keval, you wrote something, so what was that actually? They don't get new lock. Keval, are you there? Yeah. Yeah, today I'm sharing this PPT because I forgot to share it yesterday. So I'm just uploading it right now in the e-content. So students, just go through this part again. If you have any doubts, just raise it tomorrow. Else we will continue with the next topic tomorrow. So we are ending this session here, right? We will be meeting for the lectures on the next Monday here. Okay, fine, great. So we are ending this session and requesting you all to stay safe and stay home. Fine. Have a good day, students. Thank you very much.